Matthew 5, verses 43 through 45. You have heard that it was said, "You shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy." But I say to you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, and do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you. You know, the Bible tells us how to live our lives in many ways. And if you're like me, sometimes it's a bit hard to comprehend. But here I think it's quite clear on what's being said. Love your enemies. Love them. It's a funny word, love. It seems nowadays it's been thrown all over the place that it's been lost all value and meaning. But there are different kinds of love. There's the unconditional love we receive from the Father that none of us truly deserve. There's the love and affection that we have towards our parents and quote-unquote loved ones. There's even the love that we show our friends. Now granted, that doesn't mean we want to marry our best friends. But nonetheless, we try to put our friends before we put ourselves. That in its act is a showing of love. One of the hardest forms of love to show is that of loving your enemies. This kind of love is hard to show because it goes against everything we are taught by the world. The world tells us to pick a side, whether that be good or evil, whether that mean you're a Cyclone or a Hawkeye. Or maybe the sides aren't as black and white. Maybe it's two of your close friends. Not long ago, I was put in a position as this. Two of my good friends had become so torn in their own disposition that neither of them were able to talk to each other, and both asked me to pick a side. Looking back, I realized it probably would have been a heck of a lot easier to go ahead and just choose a side, to not be the middleman and being pulled back and forth. But to me, that would be not worth it. So I stayed where I was, neutral, and tried to be the middleman being pulled and tugged either way. It's funny how this can happen, and how many times we dislike it more than anything. But the truth is when Jesus tells us to love our enemies, he's asking us to pull away from the sides, to no longer pick the good guy or the bad guy, but to love both sides, to care for both sides. That doesn't mean we pull back and be completely neutral to the entire situation and don't care. Instead, he asks us to love. Love is an action, and so we become peacemakers between the two sides. Many times, we're stuck in the middle. We aren't stuck in the middle, though. In fact, more times than not, I find I have more enemies than friends. The hardest thing to do is care about someone you know doesn't care about you. But Jesus said, plain as day here, love your enemies. Love them. You know, going through high school, I told you I make a lot of enemies. And one of my biggest is my teachers. I mean, it seems like they control everything. From having to control when you can use the restroom, having to take a pass through the hallways. And the test, not going to lie, I could do without those things. I mean, sitting in a classroom, I often think to myself, it would be a lot nicer if the teacher could stand up front and give us the answers as we took the test. Kids, today the answer to number 1 will be A, followed by 2, B. 3 is going to be D, all of the above, and so on and so forth. I think I'd pass most of my classes if I did it that way. But in a way, I guess teachers do that. They give us the knowledge ahead of time and prepare us for the tests that come. And then they leave it up to us to make the choices when they come. And then for multiple choice, they throw in the B, C, and D to throw us off so we get it wrong. In a way, our own teacher gives us a test. It's a multiple choice test, and the best thing about this test is he's also given us the answer to the question. And there can only be one answer to pick from concerning our enemies. For when we choose to follow Jesus, we eliminate all other options. Don't ignore them, although it seems the easiest thing to do. Don't hate them and wish spiteful thinking upon them, and do as the world would have you do. In your bulletin, you'll see there's a question. How do you treat your friends, family, enemies, and everyone else? Your options are A, love them, B, love them, or C, love them, and D, all of the above. It seems so simple, right? Love your enemies. But that's not necessarily talking about the kind of love of Valentine's candy and hearts all the time. It's a different form of love. It's the love that you show when your enemy is on the ground and you have the opportunity to kick and throw dirt in their face, and instead you bend down and give them a hand up. Simply love them. I know, a 3-letter word sentence never seemed more difficult to accomplish. The road to loving your enemies isn't something that happens overnight. One of the first steps is to forgive them. Forgive them in your heart so that you may also believe it. One of the more hardest things to do, though, is the next step. That's to apologize yourself. For me, it's always been easier to say, yes, you were wrong, and I forgive you for it. It's a lot easier to do that. To me, it's a lot harder to look at myself and say, I was wrong, and I'm sorry for it. What it all boils down to is Christ wanting us to draw away from the picking sides, to draw the two sides together and become peacemakers in the end, to love both sides as he has taught us to love, and to have only one choice concerning our enemies, to love them.